Yes.
Okay. Okay. How do I share my screen again?
The green box down at the bottom that says share.
Okay. All right. Can everybody see the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay.
It is in that presenter format, Terra.
Okay. How do I?
Click, yep.
Is it showing?
No.
I don't understand this new computer.
Just go to the top and click slideshow at the top. Right.
How do I get out of that? Sorry, guys.
We all just got new computers and we're learning how to keep up with the times here.
Well, it's showing on my second screen like that, but it's not showing on here.
If you go to slideshow again, do the same thing again, Terra.
Click from the beginning over there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you hit those three dots again, Terra, I think it had an option to hide presenter view, maybe?
Got it. Got it.
There.
All right, everybody. My name's Terra Houska. I'm the tobacco control health educator here at Great Plains. And I'm going to talk about traditional foods that you can find out in the Great Plains area. One of those is the ground plum. These ones are really cool. They kind of creep on the ground. You can see from the distribution map below that it's in most counties in North Dakota, about half in Nebraska and South Dakota. If you look at the map, the green one is where the green, this color green, the dark green, is where the plants are found currently or reported. The white areas are areas where they're either not reported or they don't exist there. A lot of times in South Dakota, if you look at some of the white spots, and then the same thing with North Dakota, the white spots are, a lot of them are reservations. So you can see Pine Ridges right here. You can see Eagle Butte, Standing Rock, MHA. A lot of times the tribes don't report them to USDA plants. So they don't show on the reservations, but they more than likely exist on some of the reservations. So these plants are a good medicine, and I need to move this. Okay. You can eat the fruits fresh off the plant and also dried. Some people will put them in bojapi or wasna. Any of those are really good sources. And you can find them in the prairie, meadows, and fields. I usually see them in drier areas. They're since they creep on the ground, they're not in a tree or a shrub. They usually grow better when it's dry. Wild raspberries. These can be eaten fresh or dried. They could also be added to bojapi or wasna. You can find them in moist, neglected land, hedgerows, and woodland edges. And what that means is they will grow pretty much anywhere. And if you look at the map below, the brown colors, it's a mixture of native species and grown species, so people could easily just transplant them, or you can go to stores and buy some, but they're not native to the area. So if you find them out in an area that's not so populated, those are more native than the ones that you will find in somebody's yard. Puffball, I don't have the Lakota name on this one, but they can be eaten raw, fried, or cooked in soups. You can find these actually all over the world. I see them a lot in the hills here in South Dakota. And I found a website where you can slice them like bread and fry them on a pancake griddle. And you can add like cinnamon or sugar or Cajun spices. But if you cut it open and the center is yellow, then it's too late to eat them. These ones I've only eaten in soups. You can actually even buy these at the grocery store, but they're all over outside in the woods. They look like little soccer balls. Sometimes they get really large, and they're pretty easy to spot. Lavender Hyssop. This one is from the mint family. You can use the leaves for tea or use it for flavor. It smells like black licorice if you smell the leaves, like crush up the leaves in your hand. If you look at the stem, it's square. Everything in the mint family has a square stem. You can find it in part shade, in all the shade, sun, dry fields, and wooded areas. And here again is a distribution map. This one I think you can find mostly up in the hills. I don't think it occurs as much on the prairie as it does in the hills. You can usually find it all over in the hills, but in the prairie, not as often. Mint or Chaaka, this is used in teas. You can chew on the mints. There's a lot of medicinal purposes for this. I know it helps treat gas and other stomach issues. The leaves, like I said, can be chewed. The stem is square. And then if you look at the distribution map, I believe that it occurs in just about every county in the state of South Dakota. There's different varieties of it, but a lot of them hold the same purpose. Showy Milkweed, this is one of my favorite ones. That's why I have a lot of information on it. And these ones you can see all over the place. I've seen them driving along the highway. I see them a lot on the highway, but if you were to gather them, I wouldn't gather them from the highway because county roads and state roads, they spray for weeds and the wash off from the cars and the vehicles on the road. I wouldn't eat any part of those ones. The milkweed pod is a woman's medicine, so after it flowers, the fruit comes on, and that's part of the medicine. The blossoms, the flowers were boiled and mixed with flour to make a good dish. Floral bud clusters were used to thicken soups. Open flowers cut up for sort of a preserve. The plant tops were also strained and used as an eye medicine. It was found to have a strong cytotoxicity, I can't say that, against breast cancer cell lines. And when the entire plant is dried up, it's used to help mothers who are not producing milk, made into like a tea. You can actually buy these in a preservative from some of the health food stores. I know in Rapid City, Staples and Spice has them. But you can see from the distribution map, it's in most places, except for going east, but I think it's in a lot of those counties. It's just not reported. Oops. Hold on. How do I go back? Okay, rose hips. These ones, the rose hip is what shows up after the flower is gone. They're edible and make a good tea. They're a good source of vitamin C, and they can be eaten plain as well. I know when we are out hiking and we see the rose hips, we'll chew on them and get the flavor out and then spit the seeds out. It grows in a variety of different habitats, including disturbed areas. It's also found in moist, rocky soils, in mixed coniferous forests, upper montane forests, and subalpine forests. So, there's quite a few different varieties of this wild rose all over the U.S. You can see in South Dakota it's in a lot of the states, and then it's missing some of the reservation area. But I've seen somebody collect these rose hips and take them and use the dry ones, stick them in a coffee filter and make a tea out of it with their coffee pot. And it tasted pretty good, and just add a little honey to it and it tastes pretty amazing. Here is Yucca. Most of you guys have seen this all over. Has the spiky leaves in the tall flowers. The roots can be pulverized and mixed with water that makes a tea used for belly aches. And of course, the roots have been used for soaps and those type of soaps for like hair or washing your body. You could use it for both of that. And it doesn't show a lot of distribution in our area, but I can almost guarantee it's in every county in the state of South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, possibly Iowa. Maybe not all of North Dakota, but a majority of it. It's pretty well known and occurs a lot. Wild onions. Me and my kids are actually collecting these in the Badlands over the weekend. They say if there's not a flower, don't collect it, because sometimes it can be mixed with camas, and camas is poisonous. Cows don't even eat it because it's poisonous, but the flower for the wild onions looks a lot different, and the camas is missing the onion smell. So usually you can smell these onions as soon as you touch them. You can find them in frequently from low to high elevations through the hills, open pine forests, clearings, mixed grass prairies, and they can be eaten raw or cooked with meat and stews for flavoring. My kids, they won't eat onions from a store, but these ones that they dig out of the ground, they'll eat. Breadroot or Timsila. This, you can see the distribution map. It probably, I know it occurs in Oglala, Lakota County, and then up in Eagle Butte area. It grows best in full sun on well-drained and rocky or sandy soil. The plant is most commonly found in undisturbed prairie. Usually if you see this Timsila or the breadroot, it means that the habitat is of better quality. If you don't see it, a lot of times it's overgrazed by cattle or horses or other wildlife. Usually you see it sporadically, and the way it's described to me, because there's a lot of plants that look very similar to it, is that it looks like there's cotton on it. So the stems are really, really fuzzy, and so are some of the flowers. It could be boiled in soups, dried, or raw. After dried, it's ground up and mixed with wasna. And the next one, Arrowhead. This one you usually find in standing water. You can find it in silty wet soils, marshes, swamps, forest seeps, ditches, and in the shallows of streams, lakes, and ponds. I usually see it growing right in the water, not in fast-moving water at all. Usually just slow, like creeks, small creeks. The roots are eaten and used as a medicine. There's a lot of vitamins in this. And then you can see in the distribution map, it kind of follows the river, and it is something that probably is not in every county in the state, but can be found near water. Sweet flag, this is a highly used medicine across the United States. I know a lot of singers use the roots of this to help their voice. It's found in wet soils and in shallow water and ditches, marshes, river edges, and ponds. The leaves smell really, really good. That's why they call it sweet flag. It's also called bitter root because of the root, but the sweet flag is for the smell of the leaves. It smells really good. A little similar to sweetgrass, but just different. It's actually a different from a different family as well. It is used to help with toothaches, sore throats, colds, and can be made into a cough syrup. Singers use it when the throats are dry. It's also used in sweats, and when it's put on the rocks, hot rocks, it's used like a decongestant. Dried roots is used to treat gastrointestinal problems like heartburn and gas, and a decoction can also be made to break a fever. The leaf, root, and stalks are all edible. And then if you see down here below the distribution maps, North Dakota doesn't have a whole lot. In northern North Dakota, you can see it's native, but the light green means it's native, and there is no county data. So I think it occurs in quite a few places. There's just not a lot of data on it. Wild plum. This one I know it's pretty common in woodlands, valleys, and drainages. I know here not far from our office we have it growing along our walking path. It can be eaten fresh or made into wojapi or wasna. One of our coworkers last summer made some wojapi out of it, and I thought it was pretty tasty. You can see the distribution map. Again, it's missing in some areas, but you can see it kind of following the river as well. Chokecherries. We all know what chokecherries are. You can find them along streams, canyons, open woods, rocky hillsides. They can be eaten fresh, which I usually don't eat them fresh because they're very tart, but they taste really good in wojapi and wasna if you dry them, and you can make them into chokecherry patties to use later. You can see in the distribution map, it covers most of the state, most of the Great Plains area into North Dakota, Nebraska. I believe it's in more places in Iowa. It's probably not reported. I see it a lot along roads. I know a lot of people plant them also in their yards. I've always been advised not to collect them on roads, not just because of the counties and states spraying and because of the runoff from the roads, but also because of the dust. They say that the dust really gets to the cherries. And then I was at a talk recently up in Eagle Butte at the research symposium, and they are finding high levels of mercury in some of the plants that border the Missouri River. So that's something you should also be aware of when collecting plants. But I would definitely try to find them in areas where there's less traffic or off the beaten path a little bit. Juneberries. These are one of my favorite. I actually found a tree out on the Wyoming side of the Black Hills, and I probably sat there my entire lunch break eating them. They were very, very good. They usually are really sweet, like blueberries, like store-bought blueberries. They can be eaten fresh, made into wojapi or wasna, dried and ground into wasna. Their distribution, you don't find them as common as you do some of the other places. You can find them in the open woods, rocky ledges, prairie ravines, and creek banks. And that is what I included. There are so many more native plants out there. These are some of the resources that I use in the Plants of the Black Hills in the Bear Lodge Mountains. That book is kind of the book that I use the most, and I mostly use that for identification because it's kind of a good photographic guide. There's very good pictures in there to where you can figure out the plants that you're looking at, and then the other books, the medicinal wild plants of the prairie and the edible wild plants of the prairie, those books I use more for the how they're eaten, how they're prepared, what to be on the look for. And then the vascular plants of South Dakota there's no pictures in that book, so it's obviously not my favorite, but it has the scientific breakdown, so you know how to exactly identify the plant that you're looking at. So if you're familiar with botany terms, that is a good book to have. And there's quite a few different versions of it, and I think last I heard they were redoing it, and it should be out now. This one over here on the bottom is one by Dylan Rogers. It was done, I believe, in the 80s or 90s. And I really like this book because it has the black and white photos in there, are photos of Father Bugel's plant collection that he collected when he was teaching at St. Francis back in the, I want to say 1800s or 1900s when Father Bugel was around in Rosebud. But there's a lot of the Lakota names in there. It was one of the first plant collections besides Lewis and Clark's collection that exists in the state of South Dakota. So that is a very cool book. And that one is not in print, and it's very hard to find. I think you can find digital copies online, but it's a little harder to find. And another one I use, but it's not on here, is from City Bowl College. And that is by Wilbur Flying By. And most of these books are that are published have a lot of research behind them, but there's a lot of stuff out there that's not known about our plants. And so I would also advise people to talk to their elders or any medicine man about the plants, where to find them, what their beliefs are, to make sure that they're following those as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Terra. Does anyone have any questions for Terra? I am putting an evaluation link in the chat box. So if everyone can click on that and fill out just a very brief evaluation before logging off, that would be very much appreciated. Today's webinar was recorded, so we will be sending out a follow-up email with the recorded session, which we put on YouTube, along with the slides from today's presentation. And be on the lookout also for an email for our invite on next month's webinar. That's going to be on July 10th. It'll be at 1 o'clock again. And that one, we don't have an official title yet, but we will, it'll be covering some evaluation components from our evaluator at Asset. So please look out for that email. And we'll stay on the line for a little bit longer in case anyone has any last minute questions for Terra. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a good Wednesday.
Bye. Thank you, guys.